And this morning we're joined by attorney Jim Higgins with the Higgins Firm to talk a little bit more about non-disclosure agreements. This may be a buzzword you've heard lately, and how they've kind of morphed from protecting businesses to maybe overused agreements that are keeping questionable private affairs from public view. So Jim, good morning to you. Let's talk a little bit about these non-disclosure agreements and how common they are right now versus how they've changed. And what does this mean for the everyday person?
Right. You know, these are things that kind of snuck up on us. We would see them in fairly innocent ways a lot of times. They still do. We get them in a lot of employment contracts where companies are trying to protect trade secrets. Absolutely. Yeah. Customer list, whatever. And then I'd say probably about 10 years ago, in some of our bigger cases, products liability cases or malpractice cases, they started kind of sneaking in. People would say, all right, well, we want this non-disclosure to talk about this lawsuit. And we would start having to have this separate conversation with our client of how important is it for them to get the truth out there versus not being able to talk about this. But it was still rare. And then more and more. And then all of a sudden it appears from going out of even these lawsuits to just people trying to hide questionable conduct, personal problems, sometimes even criminal conduct, it looks like.
Where do you think we're heading with this? I mean, especially as, you know, we're in this age of secrets anyways. Right? Whether it's at the highest level of government or whether it's in a small business. I mean, where do we go to make sure that people are protected, but also victims are not being victimized even more?
Absolutely. And so that's where we are, right? You have something that people use as a good business tool, and then they start abusing it. And so that pendulum swings, and we've got to kind of reel it back. I will say there's been about 10 states already that are doing legislation. The problem is, I don't know if the federal government will do it. You know, there's a lot of big politicians, whether they're in the federal government or state governments, that have used these. And you have to wonder how many people, if they're voting on this, don't want to vote against something that they've used, right?
Sure.
And so I think it's going to be put a little bit of a hodgepodge for a while in the states. And then there's really not a lot of case law on it because people don't tend to challenge them. They've gotten their money. They don't want to risk having to pay more at legal fees and penalties. And so we're going to start seeing more and more cases on it and find out what's legal and what's not.
Well, when you hear the term non-disclosure agreement, just know that somebody is trying to hide something. And Fox 17 News will continue to keep an eye on that as we move forward. Jim, always appreciate your time.
You
Thank
too.
you so much.